Hello everyone, and welcome to another brand new episode on my channel, Bohemian Book Club. Today I'll be talking about one of my all-time favorite books, The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho. Paulo Coelho de Souza is a Brazilian lyricist and novelist, and a member of the Brazilian Academy of Letters since 2002. His novel The Alchemist became an international bestseller, and he has published 28 more books since then. Many consider The Alchemist to be one of the most important literary phenomena of the 20th century. With more than 30 million copies sold, it ranks as one of the best-selling books ever. In addition, it's been translated into 67 languages, and tops the all-time bestseller list in 18 countries. The Alchemist was very successful, and there are a few reasons why. One of the reasons is that the story of Santiago the shepherd is easy to relate to for everyone, and it talks about a spirituality that we can use in our everyday lives. One of the messages in the book is that spirituality and personal development are not separate. In fact, if you listen to your heart to figure out what it desires, you may find you're following messages from the universe without even realizing it. Second, the novel is written in a frank and simple style that means its gripping messages can be enjoyed. The short, simple style of this book makes it appealing to readers of all tastes. It's one of those books that has all the makings of a classic, in that you'll see yourself coming back to it many times throughout your life, and finding something new in it each time. Before moving ahead, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. The story begins with the main character, a shepherd named Santiago, arriving with his flock of sheep at an abandoned church in the region of Andalusia in Spain. He decides to halt there for the night with his flock. He has a recurring dream during the night, and is baffled by it. The dreams are about finding a treasure hidden underneath the Great Pyramids in Egypt, thousands of miles away from his home. Leaving the church in the morning, Santiago begins to think just how close he feels to his sheep, and also about how sheep don't make any decisions. Plus, the sheep never notice that they're following a different trail every day. All they want is food and water, which are provided by Santiago. This makes Santiago realize that it's the dreams and desires that we harbor deep inside our hearts which make life more interesting. Once Santiago gets to Tarifa, a small town on his way to the city where he met a beautiful girl 1 year ago, and whom he hoped to meet again, he goes to see an old gypsy fortune teller who also interprets dreams, hoping that she would be able to make some sense of his strange recurring dream. The gypsy woman tells him that this treasure's real, and that he needs to go to the pyramids to find the treasure. She also demands 1/10 of this future treasure from him. After Santiago leaves the gypsy's house, he sits down on the plaza to read a book. That's when he meets an old man who seems excited to chat with him. The man turns out to be Melchizedek, the king of Salem, and he tells Santiago about the world's greatest lie. The world's greatest lie states that your destiny keeps you from fulfilling your lifelong dream. Everybody has a dream, something they've wanted to do or be their whole life. The king of Salem refers to this dream as one's personal legend. The soul of the world wants everyone to achieve their personal legends. Many people, however, are held back by fear and routine. It seems like Melchizedek can read Santiago's mind, and promises to tell him about the treasure in his dream, if he gives him 1/10 of his sheep. Pondering over what to do next, Santiago realizes that the beautiful girl he found in the city and the fields of Andalusia were just steps along his path to achieving his personal legend. As such, he decides to sell all of his sheep and set off on the quest for the treasure of his dreams. Melchizedek advises Santiago to always be mindful of the omens, because omens are the language of the universe. He also gives 2 stones to Santiago, one black and one white, and tells him to ask these stones for guidance when he is not able to interpret the omens. Santiago buys a ticket from Tarifa to Africa and starts his long journey. When he arrives in Tangiers in North Africa, Santiago realizes that his journey will be a lot more difficult than he had expected. He doesn't speak Arabic, and so can't communicate very easily. A young man approaches Santiago who is fluent in Spanish, and offers to help him get to the pyramids in Egypt. The young man pretends to take Santiago to the market to buy a camel, and escapes with all of Santiago's money. Santiago cries in despair, but asks the black and white stones if Melchizedek is still on his side. They say yes, and he continues his journey. Wandering around Tangiers, Santiago finds a crystal shop that had seen better days. He cleans the crystals in the display window, and the owner offers him a job at the shop. Santiago accepts the offer and starts working there. While working at the crystal shop, Santiago convinces the shopkeeper to give the shop a makeover, so as to attract more customers. Within a year, the shop becomes much more popular, and increases its business manifold, because of these changes. Towards the end of the year, Santiago decides to take the savings he has amassed, and buy a flock of sheep to return to Spain. However, he realizes that though he is far from home, he is actually closer to the treasure. He resolves to take a chance, and go on an adventure across the desert, in search of the treasure. Santiago goes on a caravan and meets an Englishman who's been searching for the common language of all the world. The Englishman has spent most of his inheritance traveling and studying science, religion, and alchemy, and he wants to meet an alchemist living in the Al Fayoum oasis. He tells Santiago that it's not a coincidence that they met up on the caravan. Omens and coincidences are the universal language that can be understood by all, and alchemy is the tool that helps us interpret this language. The Englishman refers to the soul of the world, and describes it as the underlying principle that governs our intuition and desires. When we have an intuition, or truly want something, we are one with the soul of the world. Furthermore, personal legend has the potential to become true of everything on the face of the earth, both living beings, and things like rocks and minerals. Reading the Englishman's books on alchemy, Santiago learns about all the famous alchemists who dedicated their lives to realizing their personal legends. He soon realizes that all the events that have led him to this point, meeting Melchizedek, coming to Tangiers, getting robbed, finding the crystal shop, and eventually working there, were not accidents or random events at all, but they were actually signs that he was getting closer to his treasure. As the caravan trudges across the desert, tribal skirmishes become more frequent. The situation gets worse by the day, but the caravan keeps on moving, hoping for the best. Finally, the caravan reaches the oasis, much to the delight of the travelers. However, there are too many dangerous tribes fighting in the desert, which means the caravan has to wait at the oasis indefinitely. While in the oasis, Santiago meets a girl named Fatima, and falls for her instantly. He realizes that when you're in love, you can communicate with the soul of the world effortlessly. Santiago becomes friends with Fatima and tells her his story every day. He even tells her he wants to marry her and has given up the idea of going to the pyramids. Fatima, however, tells Santiago that she understands his need to go find the treasure and encourages him on his journey. This surprises Santiago, as he seems confused between love and possessiveness. While wandering through the outskirts of the oasis, Santiago has a vision of an army invading the oasis. After mulling it over, Santiago decides to tell the chiefs of the oasis about his vision, in hopes that this would help them prepare in advance for their defense. Santiago makes a deal with the chiefs of the oasis when he tells them about his vision. The chiefs propose that if the enemy arrives, Santiago will be given a piece of gold for every 10 enemies slain, but if his vision is wrong, he will be killed. On his way home from seeing the chiefs, Santiago is attacked by a man dressed in all black, with a falcon on his shoulder, and riding a white horse. The man stands over Santiago, sword in hand, and demands for him to tell him how he knew of the army coming. Santiago, frightened, describes to the man what omens from the desert told him about the invading army, and that his personal legend led him here. Santiago is surprised that the man can understand him completely, and he also says that Santiago would meet him again. Santiago realizes to his astonishment that this is actually the alchemist the Englishman has been looking for. The next day, the residents of the oasis are surprised to see that Santiago's prediction was right. Being prepared beforehand, they successfully exterminate all 500 invaders, and as a reward for his service, the chieftain of the oasis gives Santiago 50 pieces of gold, and offers him the position of the counselor of the oasis. When Santiago finds the alchemist again, he offers to take Santiago to the treasure. Santiago is undecided about whether he should stay at the oasis with Fatima, or continue his quest. However, Santiago is encouraged to go after his personal legend by the alchemist, and told that if he decides to give it all up, he will be happy for a while, but in the long run, will resent Fatima for trying to stop him from achieving his dream. It's better to follow those dreams than to let them go. The alchemist also argues that true love will never ever interfere with one's personal legend, because love is one of the ingredients for living the personal legend. Santiago decides to keep going on with his adventures. He reaffirms his love for Fatima, and then sets off across the desert with the alchemist. While traveling, the alchemist explains that at the beginning of time, all people had access to understanding the secrets of the universe, but gradually men became more interested in the material aspect of the treasure of their personal legends, and less concerned with the experiential aspect of it. The alchemist advises Santiago to listen to his heart. As he travels, Santiago listens to his heart, and finds it really tense and nervous. But eventually, he becomes at peace with it. The two travel more cautiously now, because they're entering the area with the most warring tribes. The alchemist and Santiago are finally caught in a skirmish between two tribes, and taken captive by one of the tribes who think that these strangers are spies, and threaten to kill them. The alchemist gives the tribesmen all of Santiago's money, and tells them that Santiago is a powerful wizard, and that he can turn into the wind and destroy their village. They don't believe him, but out of fear they give Santiago 3 days to prove himself. Santiago panics, because he has absolutely no clue how to turn himself into the wind. Santiago goes up on a cliff top for 3 full days, opens his heart, and speaks to the desert using the language of the world. He asks the desert to help him turn himself into the wind, because he is in love with a girl, and wants to go back to her. The desert knows nothing of love, so it refuses. Next, he asks the wind, but the wind also does not know what it means to be deeply in love, so it cannot help him. Finally, he asks the sun for help, but the sun also is unable to help him. Santiago then starts to pray, and his prayer ultimately leads him to the realization that his heart and the world's soul are one and the same. Once Santiago wakes up to this truth, the wind starts blowing furiously, and the tribesmen find out that Santiago has disappeared, only to reappear on the other side of the camp. Impressed by this extraordinary display, the tribal chiefs let the alchemist and Santiago go. The next day, the alchemist and Santiago arrive at a Coptic monastery. The alchemist and Santiago part their ways here, and Santiago continues his journey to the pyramids. Upon reaching the pyramids, Santiago is overwhelmed with joy. He finally understands that it isn't gold or jewels, but the real treasure is the wisdom and experiences he has gained on his journey, and the love he's felt for Fatima. Remembering the alchemist's words, Santiago listens to his heart, and finds that it's telling him to dig at a certain spot beneath the pyramids, where he sees a scarab beetle. As he starts digging, a bunch of angry men assault him, and rob him of all his money. When Santiago tells them of his dream, one of the men mocks Santiago, and tells him he is crazy, and that he's had the same recurring dream with the same situation, but instead of beneath the pyramids, the treasure was buried under a church in Spain. He, however, didn't go all the way to Spain, chasing his dream like a fool. Finally, the real meaning of his dream dawns upon Santiago, and he's elated, for he now knows exactly where the treasure is. Santiago decides to go back to where he started his journey, the abandoned church in Andalusia. The next morning he starts digging under the church, and within an hour, he has unearthed a large chest full of gold, jewels, and other riches. He remembers he needs to go back to Tarifa and split up the money with that old gypsy dream interpreter. He smells the desert breeze, and can sense it bringing in the kisses of Fatima. Thus, we can see how the two parallel quests of Santiago come together. The treasure Santiago sought was always right at home, which emphasizes the message that a spiritual journey is not about becoming someone else, but instead about finding one's true self. Also, Santiago returns to Fatima at the end. This shows that the alchemist's words were true. When all is said and done, Santiago was able to find his personal legend, and also find true love. Thank you for watching this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe. Your comments, likes and shares are highly appreciated. See you soon in our next episode.